Welcome to Better System Trader, the podcast to help systematic traders of all levels improve their trading. We'll give you loads of expert tips and practical advice on system design and validation, money management, trading psychology, and many other topics. Whether you're just starting out or a savvy systematic trader, we're here to help you improve your trading and find more success. This is Better System Trader with your host, Andrew Swanscott.
Hello and welcome to Better System Trader. This is episode number 129. I'm currently in Dallas, Texas. I'm here for a conference and visiting a mate, so hello from Texas. Now I want to start this week's trading thought with a few questions for you. So, ready? Here we go. Have you ever wondered why the word abbreviate is so long? Or why are wise men and wise guys opposites? Or how about this? Why is it called quicksand if it takes you down slowly? And where do forest rangers go to get away from it all? Or how about this last one? Why is it that when we transport something by car, it's called a shipment, but when we transport something by ship, it's called cargo? Now, I'm sure there are reasons for all of these, but on the surface, they don't seem to make sense, do they? Well, what about stop losses? Do they always make sense? We often hear the trading rule of always use a stop loss, no matter what, use it everywhere. But does it actually make sense to always use a stop loss? Or are there occasions when using a stop loss doesn't make sense? And if so, how do you handle that? How do you manage your risk? In this week's Trading Thought, we're going to review a chat with Dr. Ernie Chan about stop losses. And in this short bit of audio, we do actually discuss these exact points. So let's head on over to Ernie now and find out if it makes sense to always use a stop loss. Let's have a quick chat about stop losses. It seems to be a hot topic at times. People have different opinions on if they should be used and where. So what are your views on the use of stop losses?
Yes, stop loss is a very reasonable and very logical device to use in momentum strategies. And the reason is that when you are running a momentum strategy and you are finding yourself in a loss, clearly the momentum has reversed, right? And naturally, you should consider either getting out of the trade or maybe even entering into the opposite side of the trade. So the profit is telling you that the momentum has reversed. And if you're running momentum strategy, you should not keep going in the wrong direction. So stop loss are perfectly natural, and they are actually trigger the momentum direction every time. So expect to be stop out often. However, stop loss is not logical in a mean reverting strategy, because if you believe that the prices, let's say the price are dropping and you enter into a long trade, you expect the price to go up, but instead it goes down further. Well, why would you be getting out? Because you are expecting that this price is even more favorable to buy. If you still expect the price to mean revert, you should be entering into more position as the price drops. So a stop loss does not make any sense for a mean reverting strategy. And in fact, if you back test any mean reverting strategy and you impose a stop loss, it inevitably decreases the profit of the back test. However, there's also a subtle bias here, and that is the sort of a survivorship bias in this sort of back test. In that, if obviously there are mean reverting strategy that failed. It worked for a while and then the spread just keep increasing, or it worked for a while and it just bottom fell out of the market, or the opposite. And those are the strategy that we would not be backtesting. We would not be considering. We would reject them before even start backtesting it. For our mean reverting trading system. But how would we know that this good-looking mean reverting strategy that we are backtesting now is not one of those that will crash in the future? We don't. So there's always a possibility that some percentage of the strategy that seems to work now belong to the category that it will fail in the future and it will never recover. So in other words, we cannot be 100% certain that what's mean reverting now will continue to mean revert in the future. And because of that, it is always a good idea to impose a stop loss to prevent catastrophe. And that is to cut off the tail risk where your strategy happened to be the one that just keep losing and will never recover. But that stop loss need to be set at a level which exceeded all the previous drawdown of your backtest. Because if it is set at a level that would have been triggered in the past, it would always result in a worse backtest. That would not be rational. So we would want to set the stop loss at a point where it is below the maximum drawdown of the previous of the backtest, and that way it won't affect the backtest, and yet it will protect us from those outlier cases where your strategy actually is one that doesn't make it in the future, and yet we will preserve your capital to fight for another day.
Right, so you're talking about a stop loss at the strategy level there, but how do you control the risk of it at the individual trade level if you don't have a defined exit at the point you get into the trade?
Well, the risk is defined by that stop loss. So, for example, if your maximum drawdown of the strategy is 20% and you set your stop loss at 21%, then the maximum risk your system will take is 21%, hopefully. I mean, now there are cases where stop loss doesn't work, of course, at all. If you are trading, equities, there are half the day that there's no trading. So if event happened overnight, your stop loss will be blown through. It has no meaning whatsoever, right? So stop loss doesn't always work. Stop loss only work when your market is pretty much continuously traded, and also, when you are not in, you make sure that you liquidate your position before there's a gap in the market. Excuse me. That, for example, overnight gap, you want to liquidate it before the market close, or you, in the case of futures, you want to liquidate it on a Friday afternoon. That's the only situation where stop loss would work. Otherwise, it just won't work at all. But assuming that you do all that you liquidate before the market close, and that stop loss hopefully will be honored more or less. So that would be your risk level. You are not trying to prevent a loss at 10%. If you see your maximum drawdown historically at 20%, you could well suffer a 10% loss or 15% loss or even a 20% loss. The only function of the stop loss in this case is to prevent you from going over a 21% loss. So that's we are not afraid of risk that are small. We are only afraid of risks that are bigger than what we can tolerate at the maximum.
Okay, thanks to Ernie for sharing your thoughts on stop losses. Now, one word of warning here before we go. Please do not take this as a recommendation to never use stop losses, because obviously trading involves an element of risk. The point here is to consider stop losses in the context of your trading strategy and its logic. Does it actually make sense or not? And are there other alternative techniques to managing risk instead? So always consider the risks of trading. Anyway, that's it for this week's Trading Thought. Coming out in a few days' time, we have part 2 in the mean reversion series with Cesar Alvarez. So we're catching you then. Enjoy the rest of your week. Okay, well, that's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. Come on over to bettersystemtrader.com. That's where you'll find all the previous episodes, all the transcribes, all the show notes, and all the free weekly trading tips. bettersystemtrader.com.